Marius's most intriguing trait was that he was able to mend everything. If it's a car, a toy, home goods or electronics, it didn't matter to him. Good old Marius could solve everything. When something was fixed by him, it was just as good as new, or even better. Marius was intriguing as a person as well. I remember the first time I spoke to him. It was when my father gave me a farm tool for Marius to repair. I didn't even know what it did, but the tool was rusted and the gears were all intertwined and broken. So, naturally, it was given to Marius. He told me to come back tomorrow morning and the tool would be fixed. When I returned to the workshop the next day, the tool was completely fixed. When he handed the tool, it looked completely different and I thought it was brand new. He instructed me to tell my father to make sure that it's oiled enough to prevent it from happening again. I thanked him and asked how he could possibly repair anything so broken. Since I was young, I was fascinated by machinery and how the world works. In a way, you could say that Marius had become a sort of holy grail of information. He began to explain. It's easy. Each mechanism, machine or tool consists of select components. He took a little wind-up toy on the workbench and showed me the gear system. No matter what it is, it does not matter. The more complicated it is, the more components there are. But at the end, the same concept is always the same. He opened the back of the toy and showed its inner functions, the different gears, springs and other pieces he pulled out to show me. See which of them is broken, damaged or producing difficulties. Take this here. He held up a bent gear and told me, now you must mend it or substitute it or put it back together. Marius replaced the gear with a new one and carefully put the toy back. It felt like I found the Holy Grail, and before me was revealed the greatest information in the whole universe. I spent a lot of time at Marius's shop from that day onwards. With luck, I could learn something or two. As I spent more time with Marius, I found that he was not only knowledgeable in mechanics, but he knew a lot about a range of other subjects. His workshop was filled with old and odd books. Most of them were about mathematics, sciences, biology, history and physics. I adored them and spent every minute poring over their words. One day, Marius's workshop was visited by a farmer with his dog in his arms. He cried out and stated that his dog was injured from being trampled by cattle, and he knew nothing about how to help it. He was a kind man, Marius. He nodded and told the farmer all was okay. He would look after it, and in a few days, the farmer ought to return. What will you do with this? Once the farmer had gone, I questioned Marius. Will you take it to a hospital or call the animal doctor? Marius laughed and looked towards me. He said in his ever-joyful and eccentric manner, no need for a hospital. I can fix. Marius, what are you talking about? I gazed at him, asking about what he had just said. What I told you earlier, remember? Is it all composed of parts? I nodded hesitantly and was still confused. Well, animals are the same as well. Only it's biology, huge, complex machinery. The broken components are found, fixed, and again they will be good. But animals have blood and organs, not gears and springs, I said in protest. Well, wait, my dear boy, and you'll see. He grabbed in his hands the injured dog and went to the entrance at the rear of the workshop. He disappeared behind the door with the dog, and a few seconds later he returned without the dog. What have you done? I placed it somewhere secure, somewhere safe where it can be fixed, Marius replied back. Can I see? I asked him and went to see it for myself. In front of me, Marius put out his muscular arm. No, too young to see. For a long time, I poured and moaned, but Marius would not give in. Finally, the remainder of the afternoon, I spent assisting him in fixing random things around the workshop, and at sunset, I bid him farewell and went home. I asked my parents how he would fix animals that night over supper. They chuckled and told me in true Eastern Orthodox Christian fashion that it was impossible. Once one has died, their soul will go to heaven and there was no chance of resurrection, except for Jesus, of course. The next morning, I couldn't believe my eyes when I visited Marius's workshop. As I walked through the door, a dog ran up to me and began licking my face. To my amazement, it was the same dog from yesterday. It seemed the dog was all right, and all remnants of injury were gone. I soon noticed Marius in the corner of the workshop, laughing at my amazement. "What did you do, Marcus?" "I repaired the damaged pieces, just the way I said to you." At his short reply, I formed a nasty expression, but Marius disregarded it. Soon, shouted cries of excitement filled the room when the farmer came over. He seemed to rejoice in seeing his companion. Marcus was thanked by the farmer for saving the dog, and it seemed from that day on, Marius could fix ill animals as well. Marius truly seemed to be able to mend anything, and in no time, a sick or injured animal would be healthy and full of life. I was at the workshop much more regularly during this period than previously. It was an enjoyable time, since animals would always be present to play with. However, Marius still never revealed what it was in the room at the back of the workshop where he took the animals. I didn't know what he was doing with them precisely in there, or how he was mending them. All I knew was that they entered on the verge of death and left full of life. My youthful mind lingered for a long time, thinking about how Marius performed all the things he did and why he did not reveal it to me. Did he have something to hide? I tried to sneak in the room more than occasionally, but either I discovered the door locked or Marius found me at the door. I accepted it in due, of course, as things should be. There was no way into the room, and it would remain a mystery. In the middle of spring, my concerns regarding Marius were revived. It was then that Marius performed something I knew was entirely and totally impossible, something that defied everything I knew again. I was in Marius's workshop fiddling with a toy Marius had given me to fix, and once everything was done, he promised to teach me a little more about physics. But soon, my attention was on yelling from outside as I tried to figure out what it was. A weeping woman ran into the workshop. The woman went immediately in the direction of Marius. She wept. Her face streamed down with tears. "You must save her." Marius, his face steeped in confusion, walked towards her. "What is it?" The woman kept talking with him, but much of it I couldn't make out. I heard the phrases accident and tractor, and the rest I didn't comprehend. Marius told her to stay calm. Then the father ran into the workshop with a small girl in his arms. I heard the man remark, "She was crushed approximately 5 minutes ago." So much blood was on the girl. It was all around and soaked the girl's clothes. I gazed, wide-eyed, and I was astonished. Her body hung limp in his arms, and she hadn't moved once. I glimpsed the face for a minute, and her eyes were wide open, totally vacant. "Go home, boy," Marius yelled as he grabbed the girl from the father's arms. What was happening, I didn't comprehend, and out of morbid curiosity, I wanted to remain, and I began to follow them. After a couple of seconds, Marius spotted me, and he seemed furious at me for the first time ever. "Boy," he yelled at me, "I told you to go back home." His voice was loud and serious, even a bit scary. I was out of the door and down the street in an instant. I didn't understand how he was going to accomplish it, but I knew what was going to happen immediately. Then I said it was dumb. They had to contact a hospital or a doctor. I told my parents what occurred when I arrived home, but they just nodded and did not listen. Later on, the story of the girl reached around the village. While working on the farm with her parents, she was tending to the barn, and as her family drove the tractor into the barn for the night, there was no time for her father to see her, and she was crushed between the tractor and the barn wall. It was said her parents knew the girl was dead immediately, so as a last resort, they took her to Marius. The following day, I went to Maris's workshop. My skin began to crawl. As I walked in, a small girl sat in the front of the shop on the bench, grinning at me as I approached. For a minute, I looked at her, wide-eyed. "Hi," she said with a huge smile. I recalled her face and I stood in front of her. It was the same girl that had been dead and bloodied yesterday. I was uncertain what to say. What can one say to a girl who had been dead? Marius, who saw me, beckoned me over before I spoke again. "It's crucial, boy. Don't speak to her about what you witnessed the other day, okay?" "Why?" "It's better she didn't know she died." I nodded, but it didn't make me feel as if it were the true cause. "What have you been doing to her? Have you healed her? What have you done?" Marius grinned. He gave the same reply he had been giving me so long previously. "You just have to locate and fix those components that are damaged." Even at my age, I understood that it wasn't as easy as he said it was. "But it doesn't work like that. By repairing the components, you can't bring someone back to life." A kind and slightly melancholy grin turned Marius's face. "Boy, there is no easy way to remedy things sometimes. Sometimes all the irreparable pieces must be replaced." At the time, I didn't realize what he was talking about. He still spoke of people, or was he speaking again of machines? I was greatly confused. To find anything to explain the happenings, I decided it was time, and I began running for the door to the locked room. I pressed the handle, and the door opened with a loud bang that amazed me. It was my lucky day. The door was finally unlocked. "What are you doing?" Marius yelled to me. I stopped immediately. For what I was witnessing, I had no idea. I don't know exactly to this day what the place I saw was at the time. The walls were lined with cabinets and glass jars. The space contrasted sharply with the other shop of Marius. This place was spotless, fresh, nearly antiseptic, and a world away from the chaos of the workshop. A big table was in the center of the room. There was something there, covered with a huge piece of white fabric. Marius came to me, pulled me away, and drove me out of the room. But I didn't hear anything he was shouting at me, for as I was rushing away, I saw an arm under the cloth, and when we left the room, I addressed Marius after I'd composed myself. "Why is she there? Isn't she outside?" The expression of Marius had again altered. The rage was gone, and once again his face was sorrowful. "If anything is breaking beyond repair, what do you do?" I wasn't even able to think of a reply. "You have to replace the entire object," he added. This comment terrified me, since I understood what he meant. The young girl was not the same as the one outside the door, for the one outside was a substitute. For the remainder of spring, her pleasant yet hollow grin plagued me. I never returned to Marius's workshop after that day. The building was unnatural. I never discovered what Marcus did precisely, but I knew it wasn't natural. Over the years, I've listened a lot more to Marius's ordeals and shenanigans. There have been additional stories he has altered other people, and everything seems so strange, so otherworldly. I mean, Marius never did anything wrong to anyone. He gave help to all those who walked into his door, giving them everything and asking for nothing in return. But yet, I felt something was wrong with what he did. I informed my parents about what I saw, but they laughed it off. They didn't believe me and said that I wasn't supposed to make up such tales. The more I pleaded with them, the more they disregarded me and assured me that it was all a figment of my childish imagination. I left the village just after finishing school. I haven't been able to remain there anymore. I visited my parents recently. We've chatted a lot about past recollections and have been through a few school photo albums for nostalgia. I decided to look at a few of my older albums later that night after my parents had already gone to bed. I recalled that for every year of my life, My parents produced numerous photos, all compiled in a photo album. As I looked, I saw an irregularity. I saw that one album was slimmer than the others. It was one when I was 11 years old, but yet there remained few pictures of me. The next day with the album, I questioned my mother about it. She informed me I was unwell all year with the measles and remained for a while in the hospital. She was deceived by her eyes. She's never lied well, and immediately I detected it. I attempted to think back. I was trying to think back to that year. Had I actually been to a hospital at any time that year? As I tried to think, I couldn't recall. I was thinking back to my days in school. For some reason, this time, or something previously, I couldn't figure out a lot about it. I saw the album from a year before and saw myself on the first day of high school. However, to my horror, I couldn't remember anything in those years between, even though I tried my hardest. I missed all my recollections. Did I have a brain problem? Are all my memories lost? It was when I looked at one photo that it all clicked. The scent of oil and grease, the droning sound of machinery and instruments. In the photo, I was sitting on a bench. Then it hit me. The bench on which I sat. It's exactly the same as the girl who sat outside Marius's. It was the same picture, except I was sitting there, waiting on the same bench. Soon it came to me, long before that small girl was fixed by Marius. He had also fixed me.